Hello, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to our webinar today. I'm absolutely delighted to be having back on the webinar series Tiong Lim from Caterpillar. And Caterpillar, the story there is fascinating. Many of you dialed into the webinar pretty much this time last year to find out from Tiong what they were doing with Ariba invoicing, e-invoicing globally. I'm delighted to have Tiong back a year later to talk through what Caterpillar have been doing with Ariba e-invoicing for the last 12 months, and focusing in particular on some very interesting territories that I know are on a lot of people's roadmaps. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we will be looking at the Caterpillar e-invoicing story 1 year on, allowing us to very much chart the progress. So I extend to you a very warm welcome. My name is Susie West, and I head up sharedserviceslink.com. Sharedserviceslink.com was set up in 2007 specifically to help people like you improve performance. We do that through extending best practice information via webinars, through conferences, and obviously through our fantastic website. If you haven't already been on there, please do so. Become a member. It's free, and that means you are entitled to download fantastic information, which is very, very tightly sourced. We make sure that the information we put on our website really is gathered to help you with your internal performance. And I'm very pleased to say that today with Tiong Lim from Caterpillar, we have James Tucker from Ariba, and he will be introducing himself shortly. So let's have a look at the agenda for the next 60 minutes. I'm going to touch briefly on how this session works, then really look at the intention of this session, and then I'll be handing straight over to our two presenters for the day, and then we'll be taking questions in the last 10 minutes of the webinar. In terms of how this session works, it's a very straightforward platform. If you've got any technical queries, please do use your GoToWebinar free text box and submit those questions. We will come back and help you immediately. We do have technical support on the line. As always, I cannot put enough importance on asking questions to these two experts. Just bear in mind, Tiong Lim from Caterpillar has really been through the e-invoicing experience, so do capitalize on this hour that you've got with him, and do make sure that you ask him and James the questions that you need answers to drive your e-invoicing project forward. How that works, it's very straightforward. You send your questions through to me through your GoToWebinar panel, and then I ask them in the last 10 minutes of the call to our presenters. Just before I go on to the intention of this session, I'm just going to ask you the first poll question for the day. We do have a number of poll questions coming up over the course of the hour. Please do make sure that you do respond to them. The more people that respond, the more meaningful the information. So very easy question number one, just to get an idea of the scale of the organizations on the call today. How many purchase invoices do you process per annum? How many accounts payable invoices coming in from your suppliers do you process per annum? So this is all types of invoices, electronic, paper, P-card, that represent PO and non-PO transactions. So is it less than 100,000? 100,000 to 250,000, 250,000 to 500,000, 500,000 to 1 million, or over 1 million invoices? So if you haven't responded, please do so. We've only had 44% voted, so sorry, we do need to get that number up. So if you haven't responded, please do so. Let's get that number up. We like to get it to around the 60 or 70 mark. If you haven't responded, I'll give you a few more seconds. How many AP invoices? It's a very simple poll. How many AP invoices do you process per annum? I'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Okay, we nearly got to 60%. So let's have a look at the results here and see what kind of organizations we've got on the webinar today. Okay, so the bulk of the responses represent that we have kind of mid-scale organizations with say 50,000 to 250,000 invoices per annum. But we do have about just over 20% of you processing over 500,000 invoices per annum as well. So a good mix on the webinar today. Let's just have a look at the intention of this session. You'll remember, for those of you that joined the webinar this time last year, You'll remember some of the stats that came out of Tiong's presentation. Obviously, it's a huge organization, Caterpillar, which Tiong will be talking about shortly, and their worldwide invoices for indirect spend were absolutely front of mind for this e-invoicing project, with just shy of 400,000 invoices in scope, representing 2.7 billion US dollars. And Tiong was talking about the fact that they've had amazing success in the States with 98% electronic in the US, 50% in Europe. Globally, they were looking at 90% electronic, which was really very, very successful indeed. 3,500 suppliers were connected, and importantly, Singapore, Mexico, China were all the interesting countries that were very much on their roadmap. So now I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Tiong. I've mentioned his name many times already. So over to Tiong Lim, who's the MSC Global Deployment Manager at Caterpillar, and Tiong will be explaining to you what MSC means. Over to you, Tiong.
Thank you, Susie. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to me to present Caterpillar's story on our transition to a global procure-to-pay process and systems automation. Firstly, I just want to give an overview of who we are, Caterpillar. We are essentially the largest machinery and equipment manufacturer in the world. Our sales top $50 billion and is in excess of $50 billion this year. We employ 105,000 people globally, and we essentially have a presence in virtually all markets around the world. In fact, our fastest growing markets are Asia Pacific and Latin America. And over the course of the next half an hour, you see the reason why we are so focused in the regions. Because of this growth, and a lot of this growth are either generic growth or through acquisitions, and the result of which is that we ended up with in excess of 25 procurement systems worldwide. All the procurement processes are different for each system, and we found it very, very difficult to streamline and automate these systems and processes. Within accounts payables, we are primarily paper-based, and I think all of you are very familiar with all these challenges of too much paper, very manually intensive process to resolve any issues. We missed what called early payment discounts, and as a U.S. company, we do experience Sarbanes-Oxley compliance issues. So around about 2005, Caterpillar developed a set of vision and accompanying strategies to resolve these issues. And essentially what we did was we developed a common request-to-pay process globally. We have a very tight integration between procurement and payment processes. We believe that's absolutely essential. And key to this is what we call a zero-touch vision. And the easiest way to explain zero-touch is what we want is from the point at which someone wants to buy something to the point at which we pay the suppliers, we don't want a single piece of paper, and everything is to be conducted electronically. The strategy that we chose to support this vision is basically to use SAP for what we call direct purchasing and also for payment of the invoices to suppliers. And we chose Ariba Buyer for the indirect, and indirect being our miscellaneous spend and services item as well. This is really very much about transformational change, and I will discuss very shortly about how we deploy My Supply Cabinet or Ariba Buyer globally. So why Ariba Buyer? One of the reasons why we chose Ariba is that it's got a web-based, it's web-based and it's got a global capability around the world. It's the size and coverage as well of the Ariba network was very important to us. We see a lot of potential, to use Ariba network, for our supply base, and we also found Ariba Buyer to be able to give us the ability to have visibility to our spend, and particularly managing it through source planning, catalogs, and contracts. Lastly, we found the ease of use for miscellaneous non-inventory indirect spend. Certainly, it's greater flexibility provided to us compared to ERP systems. So in terms of implementation, up to 2008, we had deployed in the US, the UK, and primarily in what's called the Perkins organization, and in Switzerland. After the global recession in 2009, we decided to focus on rolling out my supply cabinet in Asia and Asia Pacific and Mexico first. And the reason is because over the time, the recession, the economies in Europe primarily is what called the still in recession, and we decided to focus on the areas where we are most in need of my supply cabinet. So I would like to focus now, in fact, on how we accomplish, rolling out to 14 facilities in Mexico, Asia Pacific in 2010. Now, why Asia and Mexico? As I said, these are really the growth markets. And as growth markets, we will put under constant pressure to try to meet the needs and service the organization and also the supply base. Also, we had a sort of much lower level of maturity in the procurement and transactional processes in these markets. An example, in Singapore, before we deployed my supply cabinet or Ariba buyer, 90% of our purchase orders are, 90% of our purchases are non-PO. It's basically invoices, received, and someone else end up having to pay for it. As a result, which is that we did have a number of challenges, in Sarbanes-Oxley, and we decided that this area is right for us to deploy MSA first. Due to the size of the challenge, as I said, we had 14 locations, and also our urgent need to try to deploy it within a year, we developed 3 key deployment strategies. Firstly, we deliberately chose a rapid deployment. We wanted to move fast, taking advantage of the what call the time that's allowed for us during recession time, and by focusing on the rapid deployment based on common processes and systems. We also heavily emphasize on automating the transactional processes. As I said earlier, we are really looking at transformational processes rather than, evolutionary. And that is to minimize error handling, reduce non-added value activities, to cope with our rapidly expanding businesses. We also chose to develop a shared services organization to manage our transactional work, and that actually proved to be a wise decision, and I'll explain a bit more later on. In terms of the deployment deliverables, our emphasis is really on this following. As I said, we wanted a common global process and system. We found that if we were to just simply integrate into the existing systems and processes that in the 25 different systems around the world, we never get there, so to speak. And so we have one common design, and with only variations only allow for legislative and regulatory requirements. We also took a decision to do what we call supply source planning by selecting capable suppliers who can sort of contribute positively to our deployment. Basically what I call, they need to come along the journey with us. So we need capable suppliers for that. We also use the catalogs and contract management capabilities within Ariba because we found that does simplify our procurement processes very much. We also decided that we must mandate e-invoicing because otherwise we cannot achieve our zero-touch vision. Essentially, what I'll call the last mile connectivity. Ariba provides us the capability to do basically all transactions without any piece of paper. And we also have got e-banking, even in Asia and Mexico, whereby all the invoices are paid through e-banking. And what we really wanted to do is to make sure that we do have e-invoicing so that everything is what we'll call paperless. And as I said, we had the shared services organization really to optimize transactional efficiencies and to also facilitate rapid deployment. This helps to free up our deployment resources and also, give us efficiency due to standard work and processes. The deployment, the way we deploy is that we chose to have a deployment team which is really multidisciplinary in nature, and they are actually located in the globally. They are based in the US, in Europe, like myself. I'm based in the UK, and also in Asia. We also had deliberately chose individuals with the right skills in purchasing, in finance, in IT background, in project management, and change management. We use IBM Consulting to provide integration expertise because we decided that we did not have the in-house expertise or knowledge to integrate between my supply cabinet and the SAP, which we use in Asia. So our team is global with local expertise, basically. Project team discipline is very important, so we set up right up front very clear management structure and roles and responsibilities of each individual. So we have basically a structure whereby everybody is very clear about what the role and responsibility is, what they're meant to deliver, what objectives are, and we also got a channel to resolve issues and so forth. So in terms of deployment, we started off in Singapore and then rapidly followed through with Mexico, and then in China, starting with a facility in Suzhou, and then Suzhou, Tianjin, and Wuxi. And in total, there are 18 legal entities in there. And they are based in 14 physical locations. We had roughly 1,500 suppliers, or in fact, it's more than 1,500 suppliers at the last count. And over the cost of the deployment and right up to now, we are now trending at about 40,000 invoices a year in Asia Pacific and Mexico. And it's still growing as we, as it matures, and it's growing very fast because our facilities there, some of them are really growing at around about 20–25% a year. So we find that the invoices are really growing as well. And really, when you look at the e-invoicing, we're very, very fortunate that we managed to get our strategy and our vision developed correctly. In Singapore, we basically had 99% what I call achievement rate right up front, and we really sort of mandate electronic invoicing. And even in Suzhou, even in China, as you can see, in our facilities in Tianjin and Wuxi, we have managed to, very much almost 100%. I mean, we only have odd invoices coming through to us where we do not process through Ariba network and Ariba buy for what we call the three-way match. And I'll explain a bit more about what we did in there. In Mexico, we are slightly lower, and there's a number of organizational and process issues behind that. But it is improving from time to time. So the team is very, very proud of what we have achieved so far, and is something that we initially did not realize that we're able to do so. Now, were we successful? I think I must admit we did live and learn. We had a number of challenges right up front, and we managed to work our way through it. And some of the important points that I'd like to share with you here is that we had the local deployment teams working with us, to deploy my supply cabinet at each of the facility, and that gives us, the ability, to tap into the local knowledge and networking as well. We engaged with our local management very extensively. We literally had regular meetings with them. We are physically there, and I had a team of people who are continuously engaging with the management there. And the result of which is, we had very, very good management buy-in into my supply cabinet deployment, and that was very, very critical, to our success. You find that, cultural differences, the different countries require you to have the local management to provide the support, because otherwise you find that deployment can be rather fraught. Project planning is also very important. We started off with a strong project-based team, and we had objectives, and we had tasks, detailed tasks that assigned to each individual, and we monitor and review that on a weekly basis. Really, lastly, is we're able to get such a great degree of success really through strong teamwork. People work well together, even though we come from all walks of life. But we are successful also because we share common goals. I'm not saying that everything is plain sailing, because we do certainly have deployment challenges. There are three key areas of challenges that we had. Really. One is really change management. The other one is regional business practices, and also cultural differences. Firstly, on change management, as I said, we do want to mandate what's called a PO process. We found that in Singapore, where 90% of purchases previously were non-PO, we found it very, very difficult to manage, and so we mandate a PO process. We also had to put in place a change management and also a communication team who continuously and communicate the progress with both internally and to our suppliers. We provide extensive training, both to our suppliers and also to within Caterpillar organization as well. Supply onboarding into my supply cabinet and Ariba network was really essential. And also, hence why we were careful selecting the suppliers that we want to bring along with us on this journey. You find that if you don't have enough successful, good suppliers, the deployment would be a real challenge. We do face challenges on the what we call regional business practices as well. As I said, we have a common process and design globally, but we also need to cognizant to the fact that different countries have got different sort of regulatory framework, like tax withholding, third-party invoicing, certification in Mexico, and obviously the China golden tax system. We cannot eliminate that. It is really a paper-based invoice system. So what we did was we developed a process around it, and I'll discuss it a bit more in a second. And lastly, cultural differences. We really had to be very, very aware of, what we say, may not necessarily interpret correctly in, say, in China or Mexico or Singapore. So those are the kind of things that we live and learn. And I want to talk a bit more about our supply onboarding process and about our e-invoicing story as well. On supply onboarding, as I said, we do certainly need to have a clear communications to suppliers. We need to engage with them at various times, through the deployment cycle. we need to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're going to do it. We had to develop a common process to enable our suppliers globally, and there's very clear rules of engagement as well. So there's a standard process. So we do what we call standard work, and standard process, standard work. To help us to do that, we also establish a regional shared services. This is actually managed externally by a company called Infosys, and they provided what we call the supplier onboarding, and enablement of the Ariba network. So basically, they contact our suppliers, they explain to them what we're doing, and help them to get registered and enabled onto Ariba network. They also provide, very importantly, post-deployment transactional and help desk support. That's very important because otherwise, no matter how successful you are in deployment, if you do not have the post-deployment support structure, the whole thing will just fail. Okay. On electronic invoicing, we actually sort of leverage the strength and the functionalities within Ariba network. We essentially use the Ariba Ariba network out of the box. We did not make any changes to it or configuration changes to it, and simply because they already have the very, very important functionality, the electronic authentication of invoices. They work very closely with Trustweaver, and we found that works well for us, in the US and also in Europe. And when we tested the process in Asia Pacific and Mexico, it appears to work well as well. And the other strength about Ariba network is that it's essentially like a one-to-many. So we, whatever system we use like SAP in Asia Pacific and Mexico, we only have one link into Ariba network, and then can go to thousands of suppliers globally. Unlike EDI, which where we could configure them on individual basis. So it's a one-to-many instead of a one-to-one. So on e-invoicing, we basically, as I said, use the out-of-box Ariba network functionality, and we use primarily the PO flip process, which creates an invoice from the purchase order that is available, to the suppliers on the Ariba network. For very, very large suppliers, we advise them to use a CXML file transfers, because that makes it a lot more efficient rather than having to manually do a PO flip of a PO to an invoice. In China, we went through a number of process iterations, and really the difficulty is because of the China Golden Tax system. This is really something which is still very much paper-based, so we cannot eliminate the paper invoices. Suppliers must generate this VAT invoice in this Golden Tax system, what they call the FARPL. And so what we did was we developed a process that can actually internally within Caterpillar and the suppliers electronically perform what we call the three-way match, the match between the PO, receipting, and the invoice within MSC. So all the invoices will be matched against receipt and PO. Any errors will be resolved internally, and then and the invoices will then finally be fully reconciled. And the way they do it is that suppliers will need to start off first by generating the FARPL within the Golden Tax system, but obviously making sure that the invoice values are the same between what the Golden Tax system is and also in my supply cabinet. And they essentially take the VAT from that's generated from FARPL, put it onto the PO flip, and send it into a Caterpillar via the Ariba network for reconciliation and payment. So MSC will then reconcile, and once it's fully reconciled, you send the invoice into our ERP system, which is SAP, to pay the suppliers. However, there's one final step in here. Even though it's fully reconciled and we send it to our to ERP to pay, we actually park the reconciled invoices and we inform the plan or the accounts payable person to perform what we call a visual match between the FAPL and the e-invoice, just to make sure that the suppliers are not making any mistakes. Because if there's any errors, the only way to do it is to really go and cancel the invoice or even cancel the FAPL and then get them to reissue one, because we do need to meet the Chinese golden tax system. We found it being very being very successful, and it's very, and as you can see in the facilities, our facility in Tianjin and Wuxi, we are now at literally 99% success rate. So really, in terms of current e-invoicing status globally, where we are now is that we have implemented it virtually in all our facilities in U.S. The only exceptions are some of the newly acquired companies like Supplier and Solar in California. We also into the Perkins facilities in the UK. We're in Switzerland. We have deployed in all our facilities in Mexico, in Singapore, and in China as well. We have a couple more facilities left in China, but basically we managed to get Asia Pacific and Mexico in last year. We are running through what we call one single instance. So we have got Ariba Buy running in one single instance in the US, but we got 4 different partition designs: one for the US, one for UK, one for Switzerland, and then the one for integration to Mexico in Asia Pacific. We're roughly got about 23,000 suppliers now in my supply cabinet. And the last that I've seen is that we're roughly got about 33,000 invoices going through the system a month, and that would compare to about 23,000 in 2010. And you can see, a lot of it is really because of our growth in Asia Pacific. In terms of lessons learned, we found that we really need to fully understand the cultural differences. That was very, very important to us, because if you do not understand, how people think and how people behave and how people react, in Mexico, in Asia, or if we have major differences between Singapore and China. If you don't fully understand and don't fully engage with them, then the deployment will not be a success. Certainly, as I said many times, the good and constant communication is very important to all the stakeholders. It needs to be continuous, and really we need to be on message, so to speak. We continually focus on global process, but standard work as well. With open dialogue, we listen to people, but we also got to make sure that they also understand what we're trying to do. This is about a transformational change to our procurement processes and systems. It is not evolutionary. We want a transformational change. We need to keep it simple, and that's easier said than done, because we have got to resist the localization pressures. People do tend to like the way they're doing things, and they make it sound like it is a must. But we need to have continuous and open dialogue and really sort of resolve those issues. I said to you a number of times about suppliers. Very, very important. You've got to rationalize the supply base, because they need to be capable. If they're not capable, then all that will happen is that you're putting pressure upon yourself, and so forth, and you get a lot of issues which you have to continuously and daily and manage on a daily basis. We have a regional support model, so we use we develop regional shared services team. One in China, one in Mexico, and also another one for the Singapore facility as well. That's very important, because when suppliers or our Caterpillar people call up this shared services team, they can understand them, that we don't have this cultural barriers, they're on the same time zones, and also, I guess, they feel more comfortable talking to people whom they know are, localized, i.e., the same nationality as they do. Lastly, in terms of what we call the post-deployment support, we find it very, very essential to maintain gains. As I said earlier, you can have the most successful deployment model around, but if you don't have strong post-deployment support, what we call the steady-state team, we'll not be able to maintain the gains. The whole thing will just gradually degrade. Especially when we got a globally based team and then we just move from facility to facility. So we do need a good sound structure, and to the user base, to the suppliers, they can see the benefits behind it. They can see that we're not just deploying something and then there's nobody there to support them whenever they need the support, so to speak. Lastly, in terms of where we are next, we are still continuing with deploying in China. We still got a number of important facilities based around the Beijing and the Shanghai area that we're working on right now. And also we are continuously expanding in, our business in China. So as more facilities come on stream, they all get my supply cabinet. Right now I'm also very, very busy trying to deploy this in India. We have 4 or 5 facilities in India, and right now, that has been a new challenge as well. Then we also need to complete Europe. As I said, we are only in the UK and Switzerland. We are still not yet in Belgium and France and Germany, and now we are getting resources committed and aligned to start deploying it over the next few years. We're going to do it all using the same system, design, and the process model as well. We found that, as we refine and develop it over the last, 18 months or so, this model works. It seems to work well, and we can, although we're continuously refining it, we feel very, very comfortable, where we got to and how we can improve it in the future for these other facilities. Okay, I think that's all that I have. So thank you very much. I would now like to hand this back to Susie, and she'll be conducting a couple of further polls.
Thank you so much indeed, Tiong. That was fascinating and very useful for all the people on the webinar who are looking to roll out in those territories. So the question that you've got on the screen, please do respond. Where is the need for global e-invoicing actually coming from? Where is the need for global e-invoicing actually coming from? And actually, where is the need for e-invoicing in your organization coming from, be it for a cluster of countries or maybe a whole region or maybe indeed globally? So please do tick the box which is relevant to your own company situation. Is it the US? Is it the UK, Germany, Benelux, and or France, or is it another location? So please do tick the box, and I'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at those responses. Quite interesting to see that a lot of the drive is coming from the US and followed really country-wise by the UK, and you can see 43% of you talked about that the drive was coming from other countries there. So very interesting, and we are in 2 back-to-back polls here, so let's have a look immediately at the second poll in this particular poll chapter. Coming up on your screen now, what is the biggest obstacle, perceived or indeed true, delaying your e-invoicing achievements? Is it perhaps the perceived fear of the VAT requirements? Is it perceived weakness in business case, or maybe a real weakness? Lack of senior management support, lack of alignment between finance and procurement, or other projects that are taking a priority. This is one selection only, please. It's the number one, the biggest obstacle for you, which really is preventing you moving as fast as you perhaps would like to with your e-invoicing progress. We've got just over 60% of you voted. I'll be closing the poll. In 3, 2, 1, let's have a look at the results. So this is quite interesting because I think at sharedservicelink.com we've been talking about it a lot. I know Ariba talks about it a lot to their clients as well, about the importance of having to align finance and procurement to make sure that your e-invoicing project does work. And that ultimately the people that do own the relationship with suppliers in the organization is indeed procurement. So having them on board nice and early is key. So if there isn't an alignment between those two functions, it can take that bit longer to get your e-invoicing project off the ground. So you can see here 29% of you said that number one issue is, the number one obstacle is the lack of alignment between finance and procurement, and you can also see 24% that other projects are taking a priority. So thank you very much, and now I'd like to introduce, of course, James Tucker, he's the Global Director, Collaborative Finance Management at Ariba. Over to you, James.
Well, thanks, Susie, and thank you to Tiang, and congratulations on your success over the last year and several years for your project. I wanted to just quickly introduce Ariba to the audience. For those of you that are not familiar with Ariba, Ariba provides business-to-business solutions over the world's largest commerce network, and we offer technology and a community as well as services that you need for buying, for selling, or for managing cash. And when we talk about managing cash, we're talking about the financial supply chain, the exchange of documents like purchase orders, invoices, payments that will impact your financial flows as well as your supplier's financial flows. Ariba was recently recognized as a leader in PayStream Advisor's Payables Automation Report for invoice receipt, workflow, and discount capture. Forrester just announced that Ariba is the undisputed leader in procure-to-pay, and we were recently awarded the Leader in Innovation Award for Best Web-Based Financial Supply Chain Solutions. So let me talk a little bit about how the Ariba network serves as the DNA of Ariba's cloud-based solutions. The Ariba network is used in over 130 countries in 70 different currencies. We have over 500,000 registered suppliers. Our cloud-based operations are SAS 70 Type 2 certified and provide PCI, which is the same level of compliance testing that banking networks are expected to go through. So we provide our buy-side customers the confidence and the capabilities with a single point of integration of our network to their back-office systems. We have standard integration to IBM Maximo, to SAP, Oracle, of course the Ariba buyer, and we have an open integration strategy that will allow us to connect with any back-office system. Our customers enjoy the benefit of a dedicated account and network program manager that helps with integration, with configuration of your system, strategic planning, and then periodic performance reporting to make sure that you're tracking to the objectives that you set for your project. In addition to the document automation, we also offer a broad set of on-demand solutions that expand connectivity and the automation capabilities across your source-to-settle business processes. And these include things like punch-through catalogs, our trademarked PO flip functionality, as well as invoice matching for contract compliance, scanning and workflow, discount professional, just to name a few. Regarding global invoice compliance, although the poll indicated that wasn't a major obstacle for the participation, I do think it's worth spending a minute just describing how our global invoicing capabilities can help you achieve compliance. Our capabilities exceed that of any other provider that I'm aware of, and partly because our strategy is not to focus in a specific region of the world, but to achieve compliance in every country that supports e-invoicing. Recently, we acquired a company called Quadrum, and this will really round out the southern hemisphere and our capabilities there. Tiang spoke about the fact that with a single connection to the Ariba network, they're able to then connect with many suppliers. And the compliance rules are also important to those suppliers. So depending on where the invoices are being sent from, those same suppliers need to know that they're going to be doing it in a country-compliant way. So a successful e-invoicing initiative is not only for you, but it's also for your suppliers. And then having that assurance is going to help not only you, but your suppliers successfully adopt and get on board. Ariba Invoice Management takes what we call a fully loaded cost takeout approach to your e-invoicing project. I think the benefits of e-invoicing are well understood, certainly better understood today than they were, say, 2, 3, 5 years ago. However, there are key differences in solutions. If you consider scanning as kind of an entry-level way of addressing the paper, there are basic e-invoicing solutions that are available, and then there's also what we affectionately call smart invoicing at Ariba. Our approach, smart invoicing, you heard Tiang describe it very well, is really to focus on a zero-touch policy. And that's important because it's one thing to receive an electronic invoice, but if you receive an electronic invoice that still has exceptions or errors, you're going to have to rework that invoice internally so your costs eventually go away. In fact, you incur more costs. So we think the focus ought to be on this fully loaded cost savings of approvals, matching, receipt matching, avoiding exceptions, and then also supplier inquiries. Your suppliers still want to know when they're going to get paid, what's the status of the invoice. And we offer a supplier portal with real-time access so that the supplier knows that you've received the invoice and when it's scheduled to be paid. Then you can really maximize the cost savings that can come through a smart invoicing solution like Ariba's. I want to touch quickly upon supplier enablement. It is now a recognized critical success factor for e-invoicing and other collaborative type initiatives. Supplier adoption, it remains one of the greatest challenges for these types of initiatives. Even if you have the core competencies in-house, managing all your suppliers across the various stakeholders, sourcing, procurement, AP, finance, can be tricky. In fact, I think Susie's poll indicated that some of the obstacles are the collaboration between procurement and finance. So Tiang described that very well as well, which is that they've done a really good job with internal alignment, internal communications. And then if you sort of look at the supplier's perspective, your suppliers also have similar challenges that they need to are being asked by many of their customers to participate in these types of e-invoicing network initiatives. And so you end up with this very complex environment that is very inefficient, paper-laden, significant impact on your working capital, your cash flows, and your suppliers' cash flows, which ultimately can introduce risk into your business and your supply chain. So the solution, and again, Tiang did a great job describing that, is to have a single point of connectivity from your back office system to many of your suppliers. And that's precisely what the Ariba network does. It sits between your back office systems to connect you to hundreds or thousands of your trading partners. The services that we provide include both the global expertise that you need for working within your organization on change management, on alignment, on communications, identifying what your clear goals are going to be in terms of targeted objectives, number of invoices, targeted suppliers, discount savings, etc. Our team of global experts will help you with that. We also have a proven methodology that recognizes that it's not a one-time project. It's an iterative project. We want to get you the greatest return in the fastest time possible, and yet we know that it's an ongoing concern. So we also provide you leading technology that will help you manage your project in a self-service mode once your project is well underway, because maintaining your supplier connectivity and adoption will be the arbiter of your long-term success. So the other poll indication that I saw was that the business case is well understood and is not an obstacle. But I want to just leave you with a couple thoughts that process cost takeout and process improvement still seem to be the primary drivers. And that's rightly so. We're trying to get efficiency within the AP function. we've talked about the bottom-up and the top-down approach, so looking at the big picture where the savings potential for process can be significant. The other three elements of savings that I think are important to just conclude my thoughts here are the discount capture can drive significant bottom-line savings if it's done properly. And so a true assessment of your discount potential and then creating a collaborative arrangement with your suppliers to maximize your discount capture and provide your suppliers the liquidity they need. Compliance in general is a huge savings opportunity. And I just think that this is an area where payables and procurement can find alignment and a common goal to really drive significant bottom line savings. Ultimately, working capital, there may be no specific owner of working capital, but payables, receivables, inventory, those three functions do impact that. For public companies, it becomes very important to manage it well. Making that part of your communication internally of how your project is going to have a positive impact on these things is important, and so understanding and articulating that, I think, is going to help you get your project going. So that's about it for me, Susie. At this point, I guess I'll turn things back over to you, and we'll have time to get into some Q&A.
Thank you very much indeed. A couple of polls will be coming up on your desktop whilst we're going into questions. Please do respond to them. Each poll will have about a 30-second life, and I would appreciate it if you would respond. So let's go straight into questions whilst you're answering some of those poll questions that are popping up. First question, over to you, Tiong. Obviously, one of the outcomes of this, the polls that we ran, and James alluded to it just now, is the tightness between procurement and finance and how important it is to have them aligned. Could you just walk through some kind of key things that you think really helped tighten up that relationship between procurement and finance at Caterpillar?
Yes, certainly, Susie. I think one of the things that we had to do, and I think China as a good example, because China was a pretty complex project. The first thing that we did, even before we started the deployment in anger, so to speak, was we spent quite a bit of time talking to the AP team, and particularly the managers there, and also the person who was in charge of the accounts payable organization in the whole of Asia Pacific. And the first thing that we did was we really had to listen to them and to find out what causes them the greatest pain, so to speak. And I think it's not a surprise to people. You know, it is about the amount of time that it takes for them to resolve what we call grief, invoice issue errors. And even though they in SAP they have what we call the scanning solution, we find that even when the invoices are scanned and then re-entered into SAP, there was at least about 10% errors there, and just by itself it can create about 10% errors. So they really want to eliminate that. So they came from a different angle, but we found that there were very common sort of themes behind it. So what we did was we had to engage, and as I said in my presentation, with the management, see what's really bugging them, and come up with common what I call goals, so to speak, and that's how we really focus on it. And actually, at the end of the day, we found that we had a lot of buy-in from them because they could see that what we're trying to do is making life better for everybody.
Okay, good. And also, Tiong, if we stick with you for a couple more questions, ladies and gentlemen, there is a poll on your screen. It is some market research for us. We are looking to run a masterclass on e-invoicing and making sure it's successful in Germany. Please do help us with our city, the city that we will run it in. We're going to be running that with Ariba in September. Please do put it in your diaries, 15th of September. So back to you, Tiong. As far as POs are concerned, first of all, actually, the first question that I've had coming through specifically about POs, how did you actually go about changing behaviour? What maybe two things, again, did you do to change behaviour of individuals to help them raise POs within Caterpillar?
Okay. One of the reasons why a lot of people in Singapore, for example, do not raise POs is because they found it very difficult to do so, especially within SAP. Miscellaneous POs, it takes a long time, and they feel it's like very inefficient, and also partly because some of them are like complex service providers, and they find it a real challenge. And the result of which is that they found it easier really not to have purchase orders there. But we, as I said earlier, Sarbanes-Oxley is very important to us. We literally were not able to comply, to Sarbanes-Oxley. So in terms of what called changing of behavior, one of the things that we had to do was to show them, what is the knock-on impact of not having POs and the pain that it causes to the organization, and actually people begin to see that actually they are also getting a lot of problems themselves, because if invoices cannot be paid, they're forever being bugged by accounts payable team or whoever else to follow the process, so to speak. And so what we had to do was really to find a way around which is actually simplify the process or make it easier, so to speak. And hence what I mentioned just now, we focus a lot on what we call catalogs and contracts, using the catalog and contract solutions that we have got within Ariba Buyer. And that helps to simplify the process. So especially with catalogs, it's much easier for them to buy. They only just go and look into the catalog, select what they want. It goes through the approval process. Once it's approved, the buyers don't even have to cut the PO. The PO goes out immediately to the suppliers, and the suppliers sends the goods or service. And so basically what I'm trying to say is that we try to simplify the process, automate it, and make life easier for them. And I think that's one of the things that help us to change the behavior.
Okay, good. And one final question on POs, and then I'm going to come over to James with one question. So as far as blanket POs are concerned, so if you've got a purchase that's, for example, the spend's going to be about 100,000 over the course of the year, but you have actually raised a blanket PO, how do you use that particular structure when using the Ariba network? Okay.
With my supply cabinet, we're able, for such type of purchases, we will create a contract order, and a contract order is basically, within Ariba is the equivalent to like a blanket order, so to speak. So we raise a contract with, say, for example, or I guess, like temp labor, for example. We will create an order for, say, $100,000 with a supplier, and what they do is that they will then, invoice against that contract. And they will specify, within it, the line items, what are the services provided, the individual names, the number of hours work, and so forth. And the Ariba contract is able to manage that, and also we don't have to raise a PO every time, so they just refer against the contract number. The invoice will have a contract order number, so to speak, in there, and it is really standard functionality.
Okay, good. And actually, I know I said this was my last question before I was going to jump over to James. Obviously, a lot of interest in China, a lot of interest in how you're managing the tax situation over there. In your opinion, how differently does China perceive electronic invoicing now? Has their response to e-invoicing, although you're still obviously making sure that you completely comply by having the manual component there, how has the Chinese government's response to e-invoicing changed over the past year?
I worked this through what we call the local finance team, that the accounts payable team there, and they are the people who then engage with our legal counsel and also had some meetings with them. The interesting feedback that I get, from especially from legal counsel, is the Chinese government are not really interested in how we electronically process invoices and purchase orders within our systems. Because what they're saying is that the golden tax system and the FARPL is really the VAT system that they have to use and they mandate them to use. But how we internally within our ERP system, or whatever procurement system you use, how we choose to reconcile our PO to receipts to the invoices within the system, they're not really interested in that. So long as the process is sound and is compliant, they're not interested.
Okay, good. All right, and over to James. Sorry.
No problem.
You going to say anything else there, Dan?
No, I mean, it was very interesting in a sense, Susie, that I actually went in more than 2 years ago with this, with exactly the same perception that people say it's not possible. But really, when you really sort of hone it in, what the Chinese government is saying is not possible is that you cannot touch the golden tax system, but you can do whatever you want internally.
Okay, that's very, very useful advice, so thank you very much for sharing that. Just before I go with the final question over to James Tucker, many of you know that sharedservicelink.com have the pleasure of having Ariba as a key sponsor at many events throughout the course of the year. We've got 2 events coming up where they are going to be sponsoring, and they're actually our lead sponsor for the e-invoicing event. They have purchased from sharedservicelink.com 2 tickets specifically to give away to 2 of you, but you do need to enter into this raffle. So we have Ariba has 2 passes to give away, one for Purchase to Pay taking place in June in London, and one for e-invoicing in July in London. Which one would you like to be entered into? I'm going to leave that open, but I do urge you to take advantage. The events are first class. I don't know if you haven't been to one of our events, make sure you do come along, and the tickets are worth £2,600, so do take advantage of that. Final question before we wrap up, over to you, James. Does Ariba actually, the format types and the types of invoices that Ariba takes, we're fully aware that you're very much focused on the e-invoicing and you take electronic data formats to get rid of the paper. Does Ariba actually handle any paper at all?
Yeah, we do. We have an open network strategy that allows us to take EDI or XML. We have basically an Excel-based spreadsheet that is an upload of CSV. And in addition to the portal-based, or what might be like an HTML type invoice, we also offer a scanning service that allows you to automate virtually 100% of your invoices. So we become basically a cloud-based extension of your AP department. We are able to do this in a compliant fashion in Europe by not only receiving your paper invoices, tearing them open, scanning them, indexing them, and then uploading those also into the network and feeding them into your back office system with the appropriate workflow. We also offer an e-archive extension. So if you don't have the proper archiving solution and you need support with that, we can help you with that as well. And all of these things are components that are required on a country-by-country basis. And there are varying degrees of what is required, but this capability and these capabilities allow us to provide a full e-invoicing solution across all of your suppliers and all your spend with all the different electronic capacity as well as the paper capacity.
Great, thank you very much. If you haven't entered in that poll, please do so. I'm going to close it in 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much to Tiong, and thank you very much to James, and thank you very much to you for your attention. We have run a couple of minutes over time, but I think you'll be in agreement that it was absolutely well worth it. Great to have the kind of follow-up a year on. So please do join me next time, and look forward to welcoming you then. Thank you very much, and goodbye.